Good evening, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for week 9 of our Why We Ride speaker series from this summer. My name's Eric. I'm the program director here at Bike and Build. And if you're not sure what we do, Bike and Build traditionally runs cross-country and regional bicycle trips for young adults that benefit affordable housing and empower young adults to become civically engaged. And while we unfortunately can't run our trips this summer due to the pandemic, we're excited to continue our mission through a few different programs this summer, including the speaker series. Part of the reason we're doing this series is because affordable housing is a complex cause. It's about more than just a home. It's intertwined with education, racial inequity, public health, government lending, transportation, fair wages, zoning laws, and so much more. And so through this series, we're hoping to dive into some of those nuances of the cause and hear from a diverse range of speakers, all working towards a common goal of fair, decent, safe housing for all. So this week, we're excited to hear from Dawone Robinson about the intersection of energy equity and affordable housing. Dawone works for the Natural Resources Defense Council and is the Northeast Mid-Atlantic Regional Director of the Energy Efficiency for All project. And he's on the advisory council for NewHAB, the Network for Energy, Water, and Health in Affordable Buildings. Through his work, he promotes increased access to energy efficiency and renewable energy resources for multifamily and low-income households. He has a 30-minute presentation prepared, and we encourage you to use the Q&A box for any questions as they come up throughout the talk. And then at the end, we will have a Q&A session. And so now I will hand it over to Dawone.
Eric, thanks so much for that introduction and also hearing about the great work that you all are doing and raising awareness for the issue of affordable housing. Really appreciate it. So again, my name is Dawone Robinson. I work for the Natural Resources Defense Council. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do, how we contribute to the cause of trying to increase affordable housing for people in the country, but also talk about the intersection of energy in the environment in relation to affordable housing. So that's sort of my work, is at that nexus of housing and energy. But I'll dive in and talk a little bit more about my work and give a little preview of my talk now. And I will try to share my screen and go into the slides. So hope you can see that. This is me, Dawone Robinson with Natural Resources Defense Council, and I'm going to go over what is my project, what is EEFA, what is NewHAB, and by EEFA, that is my project within NRDC, which is the Energy Efficiency for All project. And what is a NewHAB? What is the Network for Energy, Water, and Health in Affordable Buildings? And what is that relation to energy efficiency for all, and also our work in affordable housing? I'm also going to talk about the intersectionality that I mentioned of energy and affordable housing, and also importantly, the role of racial equity. Racial equity is a core component of our work at EEFA and our work within NewHAB, but especially now with all of the protests and the movement and the energy around the issue of racial justice in America that obviously did not start with the murder of George Floyd, but some of the recent action has intensified since George Floyd, and many of us working within the advocacy space, almost everyone just in society at large are trying to think about their role in this movement, how they can better improve racial equity. So I'll talk a little bit about equity's role in our work, and also the impact of COVID. We're kind of going through two crises right now in 2020. That is, secondly, the impact of COVID-19 and how that has impacted affordable housing and energy efficiency in our work at Energy Efficiency for All. So we'll talk about that some as well. And then also some state and federal solutions, and then how you can get involved and, as Eric mentioned, take questions at the end. So to begin, I wanted to talk briefly about our project, Energy Efficiency for All. So as you can see, EEFA is a network of or excuse me, Energy Efficiency for All is a project of 4 national partners. We have the National Housing Trust on the national level, my organization, NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council, the Energy Foundation, Elevate Energy. These are all 4 national projects that contribute to our national core team of Energy Efficiency for All. And they are diverse groups. Obviously, going left to right, the National Housing Trust, they are an affordable housing organization that has properties and also expertise in housing. Natural Resources Defense Council, we are an environmental organization. And so our role in the energy efficiency space is trying to reduce energy usage so that we reduce carbon pollution that leads to climate change. And so that is our primary focus. Elevate Energy on the bottom right hand of the screen, they are energy efficiency implementers. So these are people who are experts and go into homes to make energy efficiency and weatherization improvements in homes. And the Energy Foundation, who is a funder to many of us and our coalition partners that we work with at the state level. So these are the 4 organizations that comprise Energy Efficiency for All. And again, I am the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic Regional Director for the project and working in NRDC. And so looking at our 12-state project here, these are the 12 states that EEFA works in, and those are highlighted on the map in green. So there's one very, very large state in the West, in California, but then also we have several states that we work in the Midwest, and as my territory in the Eastern region, I oversee and direct our coalition activities in New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. And by coalition activities, I mean that the entire purpose of EEFA, our mission, our scope, our vision is that we are trying to pass good policy. We are trying to capitalize on different solutions on the state level to improve the lives of renters in these states, to ensure that their homes are affordable and that they are energy efficient and that they are healthy. We do that critically by working with our in-state coalition partners. And so for each of these individual states, even though we have the national network of the national organizations that I mentioned earlier, for each of these individual states, we try to build a coalition, a diverse coalition of affordable housing advocates, of health experts, of energy advocates, of environmentalists, of various community leaders to get together in a coalition to drive policy initiatives and successes at the state level. So they are very, very much state driven. And so for each of these states, we have 12 very, very different coalitions that are running to advance our policy objectives in the state. And again, they can be environmentalists, they can be housing advocates, low-income advocates, all focused on how can we ensure that we are improving the lives primarily of renters and low-income residents and what is core to them, which is their home, and make them more affordable so that they have more money to spend in their pockets, to make them healthier, to keep themselves and their families and their kids healthy, but then they're also energy efficient that will contribute to less carbon pollution in the air, which can help us fight climate change. So that is the vision for Energy Efficiency for All. Eric mentioned NewHAB at the outset of the call. And as sort of doubling in my role as Mid-Atlantic and Northeastern Director of Energy Efficiency for All, EEFA has a sister organization, so to speak, called NewHAB, which is the Network for Energy, Water, and Health in Affordable Buildings. So NewHAB is sort of an umbrella social impact network, as we call it, that is comprised of staff working on the Energy Efficiency for All project and any and all individuals, quite frankly, who are interested in affordable housing, who want to contribute to movement building, to policy, to communications, whatever your area of interest and expertise is, to advance the causes of making homes more energy efficient and healthier. So these are a group of individuals that's not necessarily affiliated with any organization, that are a part of a network. And this network, they share information. You are seeing a picture on your screen of an annual convening that NewHAB hosts. We try to host one in-person convening when we're not in a situation like we're at right now with COVID-19, when we can have in-person convenings, but to try to host at least one big convening and other webinars and get-togethers outside of that, to share information, to hear stories, to talk to one another about the challenges that individuals are seeing in states all across the country. We have just tenants who are interested in these issues, just normal people that aren't affiliated with any organization or who do not do this for a living. And we also have experts in various fields to get together and learn about how we can all come together as organizations and just as individual activists to try to advance this call. So if this is something that you're interested in, please, you can reach out to me. I'll have my contact information at the end of the presentation. I can also take questions. I double as an advisor or I'm on the advisory council for NewHAB. And so I can certainly connect you to us within NewHAB about how you can get involved if you are so moved. But NewHAB is vital in the world of making connections and bridging some of those relationships to people all across the country, and not just in the 12-state territory that you saw earlier that EEFA works in. And so to talk a little bit more about the intersectionality of energy and housing, because again, that is the core component of NewHAB. That is the core component of EEFA, and quite frankly, that's what you're interested, right? I mean, you are affordable housing advocates, and so I'm here to talk about, well, why energy? And Eric again gave a good overview. Perhaps he peeped at this slide or vice versa, but I think we're on the same page that we see our movement as very intersectional. So the environment, and as you can see through this graph here, issues of the environment certainly impacts issues of housing that can impact health and wealth within our communities. And Eric mentioned education and transportation. That's all true. There are so many similar causes and symptoms to our fight for a more just environment, a more fair housing policies and healthier communities for people. And a lot of that is power building. And so the vision for EEFA is, how can we build collective power? How can we bring together people who are within the environmental community, or health advocates, or housing advocates, or who may be in the business community, or pediatricians, or educators? How can we bring all of these people together to advance a common objective? And you're always stronger together than we are in our disparate parts. And so what my job is as a regional director of the project is to recruit different organizations and individuals to join our coalition and try to set state strategies that takes under consideration the strengths of these individual members, so that we can build collective power to advance energy equity and housing equity, and increase the affordability and health of our homes, which will satisfy us all. And so that is how we think of our collective power and the need to be more powerful in our fight for a more just and equitable society and also environment. That is the small p political answer of why we do what we do, but there's also a very specific policy explanations as well that I want to dive in to a little bit more. So the reason why I think this project works, speaking specifically about energy and housing and why marry the two and why do we have such a focus on those two issues. From a housing perspective, if you are, put yourself right now in the mindset, if you're an affordable housing advocate, why energy? Why should you care about energy when there's so many other issues within affordable housing that that you, quite frankly, should care about and put your expertise and your energy towards? Well, it's because energy costs, utility costs in general, but energy costs, they are a variable cost and they are a high variable cost. And so if you are an advocate who cares about housing affordability and trying to reduce the bills for your renters or for people in low-income housing, how can you make your whole home more affordable? Energy is a great place to start because in many low-income homes, energy bills are too high. And as I mentioned here on the slide, that it is a variable cost, which means that you can easily bring down the cost of energy to save people money if your utility or if your state has some programs to help you reduce your energy consumption and thereby reducing your energy bills. And so reducing energy, in short, can help your home become more affordable. Now, from the energy advocate's perspective, from an environmentalist perspective, the question is, well, why housing? Why should an organization like NRDC or any other environmental organization, or if you are an energy efficiency advocate, why should you care about housing and put your effort into the affordable housing movement? Well, on the policy side as well, is because that there are quality and affordability barriers to energy efficiency that we cannot solve without solving some core aspect of housing. For example, on housing quality, there are many health and safety concerns that are present in low-income housing. We'll take Maryland as one example, which is one of my states. In Maryland, we have a campaign to try to install a new policy to ensure that low-income homes are saving a certain percentage of energy to help them reduce their energy consumption and energy savings target for low-income sectors. Well, what we have found and what was described to us is that for low-income homes in Maryland, there is a 40% walkaway to implement energy efficiency programs for low-income homes, meaning that 40% of homes in the state of Maryland that are low income, that otherwise would be eligible for energy efficiency programs, you can't actually do any energy efficiency programs, any weatherization, any sealing in the home, because there are structural deficiencies. In 40% of the low-income homes, there are structural deficiencies with the home. There is presence of mold. There's a leaky roof. There is something that would prevent you or for anyone from completing an energy efficiency measure in the home. And so they're not considered. And so if we want to actually maximize our penetration in energy efficiency, we have to tackle some of those structural deficiencies and the quality of the home itself before we are even able to make headway into the energy efficiency programs. And so that is why, that from an energy perspective, if we really are trying to maximize our energy reductions, we have to be intentional on solving the housing crisis that is before us, because they kind of go hand in glove with one another. There's another aspect of our work too, particularly in the energy efficiency space, that I want to talk to you briefly about. This is kind of getting a little bit into the weeds, but it's important. And there is a common barrier in our space, and it's called the split incentive barrier. So think of it this way. If you are renting a property and the landlord pays your utility bills, you're living in an all-inclusive unit. The landlord may invest in, upgrading, giving you a new refrigerator or a new microwave, or, updating, all of your appliances and making sure that there's, that the building and the individual unit has top of the line, highest rated energy efficiency appliances and gadgets and programs and tools in the unit to maximize your energy savings. The landlord can make all of those investments. But what's likely to happen is that they're going to pass those costs off to you in the form of rent. So even though you're not paying the rent in an all-inclusive unit, your rent's going to increase. Well, that's a problem if you're an affordable housing advocate, because we're trying to preserve as much affordable housing options as possible. And so that is a problem. However, the split incentive happens when the renter pays the utilities. If you're a renter out there, you're renting an apartment, obviously it's not your home, you're not anticipating on being there forever. Why would you invest in energy efficiency measures and buy a new refrigerator? It doesn't make any sense because you're just renting there. Also, well, then why should the landlord? Because the landlord's not going to get any savings, because if the landlord pays utilities, then that actually may make sense to invest in these programs, because then the costs are going to come down, and then that's less money that the landlord is paying in utilities. However, if you're paying the bills, then why should the landlord cares how high the energy bill is or how inefficient the home is? Because they're not paying for it. So it's that split incentive there that is really, really important that we try to solve. And there's different solutions at the local and state level that we have to pursue. But in order to crack that nut, that when the renters specifically, we need the expertise of both the energy efficiency advocates in the environmental space and the energy space, and also affordable housing experts, different landlords, because this is something that we really need all of our expertise to try to solve, because it is a consistent problem. I want to transition here to talk about the role of energy equity and the justice space, as I had mentioned earlier, because as we are finding ourselves today, obviously, equity and justice is top of mind, but as I mentioned before, these issues have always been important for our work in the energy efficiency for all space, in the space of affordable housing, of how we can ensure equitable policies, because as I had mentioned earlier, there are some barriers to energy efficiency that is present because you are a renter, or maybe because you are a lower income, or maybe you're living in a home that is older. So there are some inherent justice issues and angles of energy efficiency that we need to solve. There are two things that I just want to focus on here, on whether or not something is solutions focused versus systems focused. Most of what we do within the Energy Efficiency for All project is on the issues of equity. They're more solutions focused. We try to find specific solutions to level the playing field. However, if we are going to achieve some of the long-lasting effects of energy policy and housing policy in our states and in the country that we actually want to see, that is positive and long lasting, then we're really going to have a more justice systems focused angle to our work, rather than more equitable and solutions oriented work. And for an example of what I'm talking about here, many of you have probably seen a similar diagram, but I'm going to share that here. When we are talking about environmental or energy equity and versus environmental or energy justice, what most people think, if they want to help out, a lot of people start with equality. And so they think of, well, poor people or minority communities, they just don't have the same things as other folks. And so if we give everyone the same benefit, then all is well. Then the world will be just fine. Well, that's not necessarily true, as you look in the first picture on the left. we have a problem here that there's a soccer game and there's three individuals that want to watch the soccer game. And the assumption here is that everyone benefits if we give everyone the same treatment. And so there's a fence in the way. There's three fans that want to watch the game. Everyone gets a box. Everyone gets the same size box to stand on to watch the game. The problem is that even if you give everyone the exact same box to watch the game, the child, the third person there, still can't see the game because they need a bigger box, even though the same box helps the second person, but the first person didn't need a box anyway because the first person is tall enough. That is where equity comes in. And so if you have a problem where you have people that are in this example that is wanting to watch the soccer game, maybe the first person doesn't need a box. The second person does, but maybe the third person, in order to solve the problem that we're trying to solve, which is have these three people see the soccer game, maybe this person needs two boxes to stand on instead of one. That is what we're talking about, trying to provide solutions to the problem. That equity is a solutions-based system, that you look at a problem, you try to identify the solutions, and you give people the resources that they need to actually solve the problem. That is equity. But there is a larger component here, that even if we have equitable solutions, which is like giving some person two boxes or one box, we still have a problem, a systemic problem in society, that there's this fence in a way that is blocking people from watching the game in the first place. And so maybe we wouldn't even need these creative, equitable solutions here if the root cause was addressed. The problem is that people are watching the soccer game and there's a fence in the way. And so if you didn't have the fence in the way, if we broke down those barriers, then everyone could fairly see the game, and we would need to provide these equal or equitable solutions in the first place. So that is where the issue of justice comes in. And so we can find solutions to problems, but also how can we break the systemic barriers facing society? That, quite frankly, is something that the environmental community needs to try to grapple with, along with some of our other social justice friends, in order to really achieve the goals that we want to achieve. And by the way, this is a very famous slide. There's some different versions of this. And I often hear the comment of, well, if you really want justice, then why is there even a chain link fence in the way? That fence should be down too. But yeah, you're right, is that the entire system that is keeping people from enjoying the exact same that everyone else is enjoying. These inherent structures that's dividing people really need to be taken down and solved. But on energy, I want to go back to the issue of energy equity, because that's really core, again, to our housing work, and to explore exactly that controllable cost of energy that I previewed on an earlier slide. So my project, Energy Efficiency for All, a couple of years ago, we partnered with ACEEE, who are energy efficiency experts in the field, to write a report and to study the energy burden of individuals and families living in different communities across the nation. And we looked at close to 50, I think 48 to be exact, American cities. And we looked at these individuals or these cities' energy burdens in different sectors. And by energy burden, the definition is on the right. It's the percentage of household income that is spent on energy costs. And so if you look at how much income that your individual household takes in, ideally what experts are saying that you want to spend less than 3% of your income on energy costs. Anything higher than 6% is deemed a really high energy burden and should be addressed, because it is a regressive, energy is a regressive cost, and that should come down. And so we looked at what are the energy burden in American cities, and to help us try to explore what solutions actually need to happen in those cities. And I'm going to give two cities in Virginia as an example, because I am but prior to my role at NRDC, I live in DC now. I used to live in Richmond, Virginia. I worked extensively in Virginia for quite some time, and that's one of my states that I work in pretty closely in on energy efficiency for all work. So just for an example here, I'm going to give a couple of examples in Virginia. So we looked at the energy burden of two cities in Virginia, Virginia Beach and Richmond. What we found is that the median city energy burden for both of those cities are in the 3%. So Richmond, the median energy burden is right around where experts say you should be at and should not go over. 3.85% for Virginia Beach is quite a bit over than what experts would suggest. I'm trying to keep that energy burden down below 3%. But disturbingly, not surprisingly, but disturbingly, what we found is that Black households in both of these cities, that about a third of them had twice the energy burden than the median in the city. And over half of low-income households in Richmond and about half of low-income households in Virginia Beach had double the city median energy burden. Now, for Black households, again, that is disturbing, not surprising. For low-income households, you may be wondering, well, sure, if you are lower income, you're probably going to spend more of your energy, or excuse me, more of your income on energy. So that's probably not surprising. Yes, but there's another troubling statistic. What we also did is that we looked at the type of households that were in these cities. So we looked at renters versus homeowners, and we looked at whether the head of household were Black or white. And what we also found is that renters per square foot of their home, which is what you see on the far right diagram, spent more on energy than homeowners. And that Black households, again, per square foot of their home spent more on energy costs than white households. Now, how can that be? The problem, again, goes back to housing. The biggest issue here is that if you are a renter or if you are Black, you are more likely to live in homes that are older, that have structural deficiencies, that are leaky, that are less efficient. And so because of the quality of housing, that is leading to the inequities in energy that we see in society. So again, coming full circle, these go hand in glove. And so we have to figure out a way of how do we increase the quality of housing for renters and for minorities in these cities. But then also here too, again, this is a justice issue. And if I had more time, I would go back and talk about how we got to this place in the first place. Again, Eric had mentioned transportation. You talk about redlining neighborhoods and how, back in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and 60s, that banks were incentivized to not give loans to Black people and to minorities to improve their homes, then were redlined in certain neighborhoods, and so they didn't have access to capital, and so they were stuck in homes that were older, that were less likely to be highly efficient homes to begin with. And you just see generation after generation that history and that legacy of those discriminatory practices from decades ago still rearing its ugly head today. So that is how we're getting there. And if we are going to solve this problem, we can come up, and sure, I can tell you that on the state level, that is my job. We come up with different state policies and regulations to try to address the energy burden discrepancy that you see on your screen right now. How can we create policies that specifically benefit low income, that specifically benefit renters, that specifically benefit Black people? But until we tear down that inherent inequitable and the unjust housing policies that have been in existence for quite some time and continue to materialize, that we're never going to close this gap that we see right here. Lastly, I'm going to talk about the impact of COVID-19. Now, obviously, this is a new issue that we're grappling with. EEFA, in response, has put together a pandemic response guide to help our advocacy and to help policymakers, decision makers, and anyone who's interested on trying to give some sort of guideline of how we can address some of the issues that COVID has had on our advocacy for energy efficiency. And the first aspect here, and you can download this guide on our website, and we can send around a link perhaps a little bit later for more detail. But I just want to breeze through some of the actions that's happening now federally and what we are doing to address this. One is that we're trying to ensure access to energy and water. I mean, these are rights. I mean, everyone should have access to water that is not only affordable, that is clean. I mean, see Flint, Michigan. And similarly, in energy, they should have access. And because we're going through this pandemic right now, and a lot of people are out of jobs, we should not have people's energy and water shut off during this key time. And so our coalitions in all of our states, within the states, are working with our state governments, working with state legislatures, working with state regulators have created moratoriums on these shutoffs and are working to try to extend them to the extent possible as people are still undergoing the impacts or fighting through the impacts of COVID. Just as one example, in North Carolina, out here in the East, it was reported that 1.3 million residents were behind on their utility bills. And so the state of North Carolina has 10.5 million people, and 1.3 million of them were behind on their utility bills enough that they would ordinarily otherwise be shut off of their energy or water. And obviously that just cannot happen because of the impact of COVID. And so, we were working in our states to prevent that. And the utilities themselves had also reported that there was $257 million of payments that people had missed. And so how can you ensure that people aren't shut off, but then have the resources that is necessary to try to catch up once they get back on their feet? So that's really important work that we're doing on the state level. On the federal level, which is number 2 on the response guide, eviction prevention. So in the original CARES Act, there was, and the CARES Act was the large omnibus COVID response act that was passed by Congress. There was a lot of good protections in the CARES Act, but one of them, it prevented evictions. It prevented people from getting evicted. Now, obviously, if you don't have a job, if you can't afford your rent, I think there was a story in the newspaper, it was either the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, I can't remember right off the top of my head, in July, that a third of people missed their mortgage or rent payments in July. That is a staggering amount, and there's a lot of people that would be facing eviction had it not been for the moratorium. The problem is that the eviction moratorium expired on July 24th. And so we are nearing August 1, where people again are going to have to pay their rent or their mortgage. People are still out of jobs. How are they going to be able to afford that? And so Congress is actually working right now on a next step of what is going to come after the CARES Act or CARES Part 2 or whatever Congress may call it, to try to protect people. We are hoping that eviction protection is going to be in that legislation, because as of now, it expired on on July 24th. And so those are two aspects that we are really focusing on in the federal and in the state level. And then there's a couple of other actions too that you can see in our response guide of protecting workers, access to internet and phone, and access to healthy housing that continues to be really, really important as people are stuck at home. Making sure that we are providing a good pipeline and protecting our workers and access to internet and phone services and healthy homes are really important. One of our core partners out east is the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative, and they have reported that 30 million families in America live in at-risk and unhealthy homes, and now that people are spending more time in their homes, that just means more susceptibility to asthma and indoor air pollutants that can affect families. And so we really have to double down on improving healthy homes for people. So those are some of the activities that we are engaged in. I would just ask for you to, if you are interested in helping us out, please, you can join NewHAB. You can join that network that I mentioned earlier to network with people. We would love to have some new members to share some stories, to share some ideas, and to have some new advocates. So if you're interested, please, I can help you out with how you can join the network. But then also, you can talk to your members of Congress as they are hearing from a lot of constituents right now about the importance of ensuring that there are weatherization services, weatherization resources, making sure that there are heating assistance and cooling assistance that is provided to at-risk families, and to ensure that we're not contributing to more people being evicted from their homes as these moratoriums expire. So those are some actions that you can take, and I'll be happy to stop there and take any questions and go through any other further discussions. So thank you very much for listening, and happy to entertain a deeper discussion and take some more questions.
Thank you so much, Dawone. Wow, that was a fantastic presentation. We had a few questions come in. One, when you were talking about Richmond and energy burden, and there was that chart, how was energy burden calculated? Like, how did y'all figure that out?
Yeah, so it was. I'm struggling with my screen here. Can you see me? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So there was it was a combination of survey and there's just some data that you can get through EIA, the Energy Administration that you can pull. But there's a lot of either state data through EIA or surveys, but basically it looks at what is the average utility bill that's spent. Those are reportable utility data, combining that to whatever the household incomes are for those individual areas.
Cool, thank you. So this is a question from Katie. So this likely varies from state to state, but do you have any examples of policies or measures that you have found particularly promising or innovative to help move the needle? For example, homeowner tax credits, community solar projects, or things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I think that a couple of different things. One, there is, nothing works, like a mandate, right? And so I think it's, sometimes it's best just to challenge, I guess that is the nicer word, to challenge utilities to meet a certain level of, so whether it's in the energy efficiency space, to say, hey, we have a goal of energy efficiency savings that you have to meet. Similar thinking in the transportation sector, like, hey, we want to, reduce fossil fuel consumption. And so, let's create a standard for fuel efficiency, and to say, hey, if you're working at Ford or Chevy or whatever, you have a minimum standard that you have to meet. Get creative and meet it. And the same thing can be applied to utilities to say, look, you are providing energy services to people. The residents are using way too much energy. we want energy savings of X percent, 2, 3, 4%, however you're defining it. Utilities meet it, and then the utilities have to assess their own energy portfolio and put together some projects and programs to help meet the energy savings. Now, there was a question about solar, which is not a huge aspect of our work right now. It was in a previous life, so I guess I can talk about it. Community solar is really, really important, particularly for renters, right? Because if you want to get in on the clean energy movement, there are a lot of restrictions that you can't, obviously, if you're living in a large multifamily property, put solar panels on the roofs and trickle those down into individual meters. Sometimes there's some restrictions there. And so if you did have some sort of community solar program where there was one centralized solar array that was generating energy and people can buy in and opt into that, that could be pretty helpful as well to try to get around some of those structural barriers that too many people have, particularly if you are in a multifamily dwelling.
Thank you. So going back to energy burden a bit, how do we solve that? Is it through policy changes? Is it through new housing? Is it through housing improvements? How do we decrease the energy bill, especially going back to the landlord-renter barriers that you outlined? How do we overcome that to increase the energy efficiency for this housing stock that already exists?
Yeah, I think you mentioned a couple, so I will start one. One, it's imperative that we have resources for those health and safety improvements that I mentioned earlier, because they are often a separate pot of funding. Right? So states or utilities, they have their money for energy efficiency programs. If there is a new like a refrigerator replacement or upgrade, or insulation, or weatherization, or new low flow shower heads, whatever, there's your money for those individual programs. But for the structural problems of the home, or your utility is not going to use their energy efficiency budget, usually can't use their energy efficiency budget to replace a roof, right? I mean, that has to be, something else. And so what we have to do is we have to work with our state governments to try to find other ways or other methods of funding to solve some of those inherent structural barriers with the home. And then, easier said than done, getting a couple of different agencies to work together to complement what needs to happen to get a home up to code and up to standard, and then layer on the energy efficiency programs after that. There's another aspect too. I can name several other things, but also, quite frankly, I think that sometimes we have to, within the environmental movement, I'll shine the light back on us. We have to relook at our priorities when it comes to trying to fight climate change. Some of the problem has been in the past that if you are an energy advocate, energy efficiency advocate, you want to maximize energy efficiency reductions. Where are you going to maximize the greatest amount of savings? It's not from low-income housing, right? It's if you want to save the maximum amount of energy, it's first of all, it's usually commercial lighting. I mean, that's where, you go into your big box stores, you replace, you upgrade the lighting, that immediately saves a lot of energy. Schools and hospitals, similarly, I mean, a lot of large building lighting. If you're looking at the residential portfolio, it's single family homes. It's not low income, and it's not multifamily, because you're just not getting just the greatest net energy savings from those homes. And then B, you're not getting the most bang for your buck, because again, it just costs so much more money and so many more resources to fix those homes up. And so there's a little bit of a tension here, right? If I'm an environmental advocate, I want the maximum energy reductions, but low-income homes, that's not it. So I need to try to sacrifice a little bit to try to address some of those systemic issues that we outlined.
Thanks. This is a question from Liza. And I think you kind of touched on this in your last answer. What are some challenges that you've faced while building relationships across different advocacy groups and causes, and how have you worked through those challenges?
Yeah, so some of the that's a very, very good question. And relationship building is absolutely key. I think the important thing is that we understand, coming from a large green in RDC, or big green is what they're called in the movement space. We have to understand that we have to work on issues that are not environmental issues, from some of the very specific policy reasons and practical reasons that I talked about earlier, but it's also building trust, right? We look at now at like the Black Lives Matter movement right now. I mean, there's Black men that's getting shot, it's getting killed. How can you convince them that they should worry about climate change when they're in fear of walking to the store and coming home without getting killed? And so we have to understand that. Like, if I want to seek the help of some social justice organization, I have to understand what they are going through right now and offer to help them in their cause, even if it has absolutely no upside for me right now whatsoever. I have to figure out a way to reach out and support other organizations' work, and then over time they're going to support my own. I mean, that is what we have to do better in this space. We just have to be better community partners, better listeners, more patient. I mean, that's what relationship building is all about. But then also, again, it's about those dueling priorities, and sometimes you have to work through that. So again, on the energy efficiency space, if you're from the environmental perspective, your gut reaction is, I care about climate reductions or emission reductions and solving climate change. If you are a low-income advocate, it's, don't really care about that. How can we maximize investments in low-income homes to reduce energy burden? If you are a worker, it's great. Well, what sort of worker protections are there? Where can I, get the most money to support my business? If you're a utility, you have different priorities. So, part of that is part of the challenge, is trying to identify the priorities of each organization, but then also just the time and effort that it takes to garner trust and respect with each other so that we can work on our own issues. Because I guarantee you that if I am reaching out to, let's say, a social justice organization to support us in their work, they're going to need me to support them. And quite honestly, sometimes it's the same target. It's the same agency that is dealing with an issue of like poverty or education or housing, or the same group of people, or the same commission that is working in the healthcare industry or healthcare regulation and energy regulation. We're all trying to move the same targets, and so we still need to try to figure out how we can all work together.
Great. Are there any programs through HUD or other organizations for energy efficiency in public housing and or for renters using voucher-based assistance like Section 8?
Yeah, there are. And those are some programs that are being led by a lot of federal housing advocates, that we work with, and certainly that we work with at Energy Efficiency for All. I will say that some of those housing vouchers and something that's more appropriate for our advocacy on renters, some of the project-based rental assistance to ensure that that housing, or that the affordability of the multifamily housing stock actually is preserved. Those are constantly under attack by different budgets in Congress and what the administration is proposing. So we have to constantly fight for preservation of some of those resources. So I mean, they are helpful in our advocacy, but some of those budgets are continually under fire every year in the budget process, and so we have to work to preserve them.
Great, and then last question. I think this relates back to your answer to building relationships across issues, causes. But from an equitable viewpoint, is there a priority within affordable and decent housing that's being discussed? Like, is there a hierarchy of issues? And where does something like energy efficiency fall within such a large crisis such as affordable housing, that permeates the entire U.S.?
Yeah, it's really hard to prioritize, honestly, because there's so many issues, and we didn't even get to discussing water affordability, water quality. I mean, there are so many issues that, again, like if I am, and I try to think about these issues from the resident's perspective, because that's what we're in it for, right? It's from the tenant's perspective. I have a lot of concerns, and none is really necessarily more important than the other. But I just know that I have a problem, or a series of problems that needs to be addressed. And so it's difficult to prioritize. And so honestly, that going back to the importance of coalition building, that's actually the one of the good results of building a diverse, strong coalition, because you can have different members of your coalition attacking different aspects of a problem or different problems altogether, that if solved, work together to improve the whole, which is to reduce or to increase the affordability of housing for tenants. So that's the importance of relationship and coalition building that we try to implement across our states.
Great. Well, that was our last question. So thank you so much for spending time with us this evening and sharing all your knowledge. You are a well of knowledge in this field, and it's exciting to listen to you talk about it all. If you, the audience, have enjoyed what you've learned this evening and feel inspired to donate to Bike and Build, check out the link in the box so you can support our work in this series. And you can look at our website, bikeandbuild.org, to see what programs we offer, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. So Dawone, thank you again so much. Thanks to everybody who attended tonight. And we hope to see you next week when we hear from Colin Killick, the Executive Director of the Disability Policy Consortium, about his work organizing and advocating for affordable housing policy changes at the grassroots level. So Dawone, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric. Thanks for you all for attending. Glad to be here.
Have a good night, everybody.